Bury Our Bones With, the podcast that lives, breathes and dies classic movies. We are your hosts, me, Ryan Etherington, and joining me as always, the Omega Man to my Omega-3 fish oil, the bearded messiah, Jimmy Murphy. In today's episode, we venture into the past with James Cameron's machine-turned sidekick sci-fi classic, The Terminator. So join us as we formulate a plan to save our true love's yet-to-be-born son, conveniently steal some Nike high tops, and somehow convince ourselves that we stand a chance against an overly sized Austrian cyborg as we bury our bones with the Terminator.
VHS is yesterday's news. Out with the old and in with the new. You heard it here first. Betamax is where it is happening. And the only place to start your collection is the Willie Parks Betamax Parlor. We have all the greats and the hidden gems you've never heard of. Like the Crocodile Killer, Which Way is West and How Do I Get There? And of course, the classic, And Maggots Ate My Homework. That's just the tip of the iceberg. All you need is a thirst for the silver screen and a compatible Betamax player to enjoy everything we have to offer at Willie Parks' Betamax Parlor. You don't even need a membership, just imagination. Located opposite the Little Chef on the Walworth Road, ask for Willie and you could be one step closer to Betamax satisfaction.
So, 1984's The Terminator, James Cameron. When was the first time you saw this, if you can remember?
Yeah, I can't remember exactly. Like, I was thinking about this yesterday, and I know when I first saw it. I know how I first saw it, and I was trying to remember. Originally, I was like, so what happened was, like, I got up one morning, and my dad said to me, "There was a film on last night I think you'd like. It's the sort of rubbish you watch. I recorded it for you."
Good start.
Yeah, that's how he talks to me. You know, still. It's the sort of rubbish you like. So I recorded it, and it was obviously The Terminator. I think I was about 8. And I've been trying to think, trying to exactly nail down how I think the oldest I was 11. And I was somewhere between 8 and 11. But that little insight into my parents' parenting skills.
Nothing like 80s Western parenting, is it?
Yeah. It's the sort of rubbish you'd like. I've recorded. I don't think I knew. I'd never heard of The Terminator. I'm not sure whether I knew who Arnie was at the time. He was a huge star. I mean, it was on telly, so it was many years after. Is it 84?
1984.
Hey, it's so old, isn't it? So I was thinking,
it's nearly
slightly
50 years
now.
old.
So when's the second film? 92?
91.
91,
92.
How old is John Connor supposed to be in that film then?
I think he's supposed to be about 11 or 12.
Which doesn't make sense, right? Because he can only be 6.
I don't think it's set in 91 though.
Is it not?
I don't think they quite...
They just don't mention the year.
I mean, the fact in the first film, Sarah Connor is 18.
Is she?
And looks about 35.
Yeah. It was the 80s. As previously discussed, though, it was the 80s, and people looked middle-aged when they were 20. Yeah,
right. When I was watching it yesterday, and I was doing a bit of research, and it says... And I don't think they don't say that in the first one. I think they mention it in other media. I don't know if it's in the second one, but I know they mention it at some point. She's supposed to be 18 in 1984. And it just blew my mind because I'm going, she does not look 84. Which is accurate. She doesn't look 84.
Miracle baby in more ways than one.
She doesn't look 18.
Yeah.
But yeah.
That is crazy.
But
that was what all I kept thinking, was like, this film was 1984. I'm sure I thought the second one was like 92, regardless. I was like, I'm sure he's supposed to be a teenager in that film. I was like, there's no way he's like 6 or 7. That doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
But if you're right, if it's not set, maybe they just fudged the timeline a bit. I don't know, maybe.
I mean, the fact that it's time travel, you can kind of get away with...
I demand realism in my cyborg robot killer sent from the future to destroy Jesus' mum.
And that's where you're going wrong.
So that was... I remember watching it and loving it. Like I say, I can't have been older than 11. I've got a feeling I was still in junior school. Which would put me somewhere around 10, maybe. I don't know. Great film. Love it to this day. Yeah, that was my first. Like I said, I can't remember if I knew who Arnie was. I'm sure I did. I'm sure I knew him from stuff at that point. But because I remember having this feeling of he looks so different in the Terminator than he does as Arnie, the movie star, later on. You know what I mean? I remember having that sort of impression, and I'm sure it was from the first viewing. What about yourself? When did you first come across the Terminator?
A somewhat similar experience, although it wasn't my dad saying there's a film you like on the telly, because he didn't really offer films to me unless it was based in World War II.
Yeah, still the same.
Yeah, I mean, nothing's changed. Christ, we're going through a lot of therapy talking points here. But
did he did he like Dunkirk and Christopher Nolan?
He did, but he criticised it, and it really annoyed me.
Did he pick it apart with factual correctness?
I said, "What do you think of it, Dad?" And he was like, "Yeah, not too bad. Little problem though." And then he starts going on about the sound of the engines, and I'm just like, oh, for Christ's sake. I mean, I get it, but we've gone on a tangent there.
For those of you who obviously won't know, that's actually a pretty good impression of your dad right there.
Not bad. I've had years to get that impression down to a T.
It's pretty good, man.
But very similar to your kind of experience. I think I was around similar sort of age, definitely too young to watch the film, and I think it would have been on ITV or something like that. My mum and dad didn't really buy movies. Might have rented it, but I have a feeling it would have been on TV. And the only thing I can really remember from when I first watched it was the scene where it's in the future and Kyle Reese is kind of going back to his like camp, and he's followed by one of the Terminators, and there's that kind of silhouette with the red eyes as he stuck with me for quite a long time, because that was pretty scary as like an 8, 9, 10-year-old.
As you're watching that scene as an adult, you're going, he's just got glasses on. And he's just giving him some little red glasses.
That's the thing, as you get older, you do start to
become more cynical about
lose the magic of films.
You can't, especially when you're doing podcasts like this. You start looking for the joins, don't you? You know. But yeah, I know exactly what you mean. That's like the first time you see that, you're like, that's amazing.
It looks amazing.
That's so cool. And then as you get older and cynical, you go, that's really easy to do, though, isn't it? He just stuck some lasers on his eyeballs.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And funnily enough, when you actually look at how the film was made, a lot of it is. I'm not going to say it's easy to do, but it's a really simplistic way of filmmaking. There's not a lot of there's a lot of camera trickery. There's a lot of forced perspective, and there isn't an over reliance on CGI and things like that.
What was CGI before it was CGI? I forget now. So you got practical effects, which this film has plenty of, and then there'd be the equivalent of CGI. I don't know what you call it. It's because it's like matting, isn't it? So I think they call it matting when you record one thing and then you stick the other thing over the top, and that's how most of those sort of Sinbad type special effects are done. Which this film has plenty of Sinbad-esque special effects, but it creaks in places. This movie, it's 40 years old now, though. 40 years before this was basically the Second World War, so it's aged very well, like most movies from the 80s do. They creak in place, and this movie does creak. There's like the opening scenes of the futuristic apocalyptic landscape look pretty good. The flying helicopter thing right at the beginning looks like it's on strings. Like there's no way around it.
It's the movement of it that gives it away. I think it looks pretty good, but as soon as it starts moving, that's when
it basically, I can almost hear in my head as it moves. It's like a marionette going on. Little things like that, and there's just odd stuff, like stuff that I guess betrays its age, where it sort of weirdly looks like an 80s TV program, like a procedural drama, like a Hill Street Blues or something. But I think that's just the time thing. It's a 40-year-old movie, you know what I mean? Like you say, it, for the most part, holds up incredibly well. Even the slightly sketchy claymation-esque. I mean, there's a point, I'm getting a little bit ahead of ourselves here, but there's a point towards the end of the film when he is the exoskeleton Terminator, no more flesh on his bones. And it's clearly someone walking around just holding him up from the waist underneath the car. I think you can see the dolly holding him at one point, and they're just trying to make it look like he's moving, and it's creaky.
There's a lot of wobbling. There's not like
you can tell
he looks like he's on sure footing.
Yeah,
it always looks like he's trying to, like he's on a boat. Which, when you're not on a boat, gives away some of the mystique about it.
But that's the thing. But for 40 years ago, I mean, what more do you want?
I think the way I always try and process it is, yes, things can look ropey, things can look dated, but does it detract away from the overall enjoyment of the film? And here it definitely doesn't. I think there's enough stuff going on where, again, you know how it's done, but it still looks pretty good, even though I know the magic behind it. There are a couple of things that kind of really do kind of stick out to me in terms of I know we always have that CGI versus practical effects. One of the drawbacks of practical effects is when you're going to do the head and face of somebody, try to make it look as much like the actor you're masking it on, because those are the bits that really kind of you go, those look a little bit.
I believe the problem stems much like George Costanza in a swimming pool. They suffer with shrinkage. So Ryan was just taking a swig then,
trying not to spit water over all of these electricals we have in the room.
So I think they take like a good mould of the face, and then there's a certain amount of shrinkage happens, and you get that weird, that doesn't kind of look like him, bad squished Arnie head where he's taking his eyeball out and all of that sort of stuff. Yeah.
And again, the movement gives it away. It's the things where you kind of go, well, that's not a realistic movement for a sentient being of some variety.
No, that's
it
right.
looks very like stop motion pro, which again is used here in some of the latter shots, which probably are some of my pet peeve shots, because I always think stop motion pro dates anything, even if if you do it now, it has that look where it looks exactly like what it is.
I love that look, so I know exactly what you mean. If I have a real,
it's very Jason and the Argonauts type thing.
I want to make stop motion animations.
Very difficult thing to do, and very skillful. And don't get me wrong, I think if in a film where, like Jason and the Argonauts and like those old movies where that's just because that's how things were done, and if that's the kind of look that you're going for, I appreciate that, and I can get on board with that. I think here it's the only kind of things really where it kind of goes, that doesn't quite fit with the rest of what's going on. Yeah. Almost. But
at the time, that is the only way you're going to see the Terminator move, pre-CGI and all that stuff. I love it. I know exactly what you mean, though. It looks really weird because it instantly you go, like Jason the Argonaut music in your head. So I get it. I really do. I love stop motion. I just love it. So even when it looks terrible, to be fair, it doesn't look terrible. Even when it takes you out of the movie, which it does in this case, because it looks different.
You can't help but notice it.
That matting effect makes the saturation of the picture looks completely different when it's on. You can see there's two layers of film there. It gets slightly darker and slightly fuzzier. But because I love it so much, it just makes me smile every time I see it. Yeah.
It sort of reminds me of, for anybody in listening in Britain, those old sitcoms where most of it's filmed on a soundstage or a set, and then they go to an exterior shot, and it quite obviously looks grainy and like
using actual film, aren't they?
Yeah, almost like they're using a different type of camera, which they probably are.
Yeah, they use. I think they switch from like whatever it is they use to proper film. Yeah, that's why it costs so much.
And that's the kind of effect that is kind of created when you use stop motion pro. It looks very, very different to anything else. So if it's not a film full of it, it can very easily kind of
especially when you're
pull you
bouncing
out ever so
back and
slightly.
forth within the same scene.
Yeah.
Different shots, and you can. It really does stand out. Yeah.
So, shall we look at the figures of the film?
Yeah.
So, 1984. So, it was made on a rather small budget of $6.4 million.
Yeah, so.
But that is a very small number for the type of
But
film
what
that's
he
being
achieved,
making.
because that's the thing. I was watching it yesterday, thinking sometimes, like I said, this film creaks in places. It's not anything terrible. It's a 40-year-old film. Blah blah blah. But I was like, I think the note I wrote was it shows its budget occasionally, and then I was like, in my head, this film's a low budget film. It's always been spoken of as a low budget film. I don't see a low budget film when I watch it. There's little moments. The dubbing, actually, to be fair, the dubbing is done incredibly well in this film. Actually, it doesn't stand out a huge amount, but little bits. There's certain shots, little bits and bobs here and there where I thought, it's showing its budget, and I was like, this film. If I've always known this film was a low budget film, and if this is the case and this is a low budget, it's an amazing achievement. Like, it doesn't come across like a low budget film, does it?
I think it's a perfect example of having a passionate approach and skill to making, because I don't have the specifics, but I would imagine that a large proportion of the budget goes towards cast and paying the people to do whatever it is they're doing, as opposed to.
I assume most of these people. I mean, Arnie had done Conan.
Yeah, he'd done the two. I think the second Conan film came out the same year, and they actually had to halt filming on Terminator to finish. It's Conan the Barbarians?
That's the first, and I think, is it Conan the Destroyer? The second.
Can't they just name it one or two?
I was watching Conan the Barbarian the other day. Actually, it's all right.
So he'd done those two, and Hercules in New York.
I don't think that counts. Arnold Strong,
Mr. Olympia.
I like the dub version when they took out his voice and they had someone doing his.
I don't think I've ever seen that.
That's the first one I ever saw. It was on TV once, and it's like a really young Arnold Schwarzenegger, and he's he talks like that, and it's really bad.
Did you at least get a voice that looks like it matches the guy on screen?
It's a proper all-American.
Wow.
Yeah. I don't know who the voice actor was, but yeah.
So Arnold Schwarzenegger had only really done the Conan films that were what you would call big
Conan
successes.
Made him a successful actor.
It put him in the. It put him in the forefront of people's minds.
Yeah, I watched the Netflix documentary about Arnie the other day, and from that he couldn't get any work at all after Hercules for some strange reason, and then years went by, and he got the Conan movie against the producer.
10 years difference, isn't it?
Yeah, against the producer. The producer didn't want him, but the director did.
Yeah.
I want to say Milos Forman or something like that. Anyway, and I think, and it made him a movie star, but I don't think he was nowhere near Arnie the movie star.
I think Terminator is kind of what pushed him into that stratosphere.
Exactly, yeah.
So as we said, $6.4 million, which is about £5.2 million, and equivalent today is about 16.4 million.
For a sci-fi movie with futuristic scenes and a robot in it, and that's really impressive.
That's the thing. It's a high value concept. It's not something that you're going to be able to skimp on, and yet somehow they managed to skimp on a lot of things.
Yeah, I assume they didn't pay anyone.
We had the urban legends. How accurate they are, I'm not sure. But the scene where Arnie goes to break into the car and he smashes through the window, they didn't have any permits for that, and it was just a random car on the street. And James Cameron was like, Arnie, however he referred to him, punch through the window, get in the car, and we'll film it. I think it was like one of the last shots. I think they just didn't have any money, any permits. And I think they left like an IOU on the car because it wasn't theirs. It was just somebody random car. How accurate that is, I'm not sure. But I quite like the idea of some guy getting out. Somebody smashed my window in, and then going, "That's my car." But he's watching the film,
like 18
going,
months later
right,
or something like.
Okay,
mystery solved. Yeah.
So a low budget, but somehow managed to make a really, really strong film that, as we've discussed, can, if you're looking for it, look a little bit creaky 40 years later.
Yeah, only with time, isn't it? Yeah.
We're still watching it 40 years later. It made $4 million back in its opening weekend, so 2/3 of your budget back straight away. About £3 million, about £10 million today. Gross US and Canada, 38 million, which is about £31 million, and then worldwide 78 million. So they're not astronomical numbers by today's standards, but by the standards of 1984, that is incredibly successful.
Yeah, I mean, it's hundreds of millions when you adjust for inflation, right?
It's 200 million.
Jesus.
200 million adjusted for inflation today.
That's not bad.
It's not bad going, is it?
$16 million film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know.
And it deserves it. Deserves every penny of it. It's a great movie.
It's just fantastic.
It's
top to bottom.
The concept of the movie itself, when you really look at it, it's an amazing concept. You know what I mean? Man and robot come back from a doomed future to kill Jesus' mum before he can be born, essentially. It's just crazy when you think about it.
And when you say it like that, it doesn't sound particularly relatable. And yet somehow it is.
Yeah.
Somehow when you're watching it...
They predicted the internet. You know what I mean? And AI, you know what I mean? And that it would turn on man and destroy us all. Welcome to the 21st century. Although I think in the film, isn't it 1994 or something it's supposed to happen? I can't remember. When is Doomsday originally? 99, I forget. They keep moving it, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's supposed to be when the second film comes out. Well, not when it comes out, but when the second film is set, because that's why it's called Judgment Day.
Right.
But again, it's not, unless I'm missing it, I probably am. It's not explicitly kind of said. I'm sure they move. I'm sure it is explicitly said, and they keep moving it. And they say, well, each time you interfere, you move it, but it's still inevitable that it will happen. I'm sure that's the thread. Yeah, that sounds quite accurate. So, directed and written by James Cameron, who up to this point was I don't think he was a relative unknown, but he wasn't James Cameron of 10 years later, shall we say. It was also co-written by Gail Ann Hurd and William Wisher. Gail Ann Hurd also produced the film. The composer is Brad Fiedel, and then the cinematographer is Adam Greenberg. And across the board, on those names, everybody does their job brilliantly.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, the score is... It's so of its time and yet so futuristic.
It's an amazing score. It does its job so well. So there's only 2 points. There's nothing I don't like about the score. As anyone who's listened to the terrible skit music that I love to put on, I love a cheesy synthesizer, you know what I mean? There's only 2 points where it really jars for me in an Untouchables manner-esque. If anyone's heard that episode, you'll know what I'm talking about. And that's there's a moment in I'm going to call it a raid on the police station when Arnie turns up. There's a moment when Carl Reese and Sarah Connor are escaping where the synth is just like, I don't understand why you're doing that. And it happens again later on at, I think it's the motel when they're escaping the motel. It might even be the same music. It's definitely in the same wheelhouse where it pulls me out of it. It's just so 80s synth that I can't take it. But apart from that, the rest, it's perfect. Yes, I mean, the it's still on every Terminator movie now, 40 years later.
And yet,
you know?
for some reason, they still have... I understand wanting to make something your own, but there's a reason why it's so good. Don't fiddle around with it. And it literally annoys me so much. If I'm going to go and see a Terminator film and they don't have dun 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 dun, if they don't have that, or it's like some weird orchestral version or anything like that, just do one, because it's absolutely perfect.
Do you know what I really want at every Terminator movie is that, and I want the Terminator thing to be going across itself on the screen on the opening titles. You know, it goes that way.
Yes, yeah,
like,
yeah.
Every time the film starts with that, I
had forgotten that opening title, and it's one of those things when you watch a film that you love and you haven't watched it for a while, you remember all the things that you love about it, and it's that thing of I saw it and I was like, oh yes, we're back in business, baby. It's just I think the one thing that really sums up the score perfectly is I don't know if it was James Cameron or Brad Fiedel who he coined this phrase or term, but it kind of underpins all of the score, is that he wanted it to sound like a machine's heartbeat. Right, yeah, because it does. And as soon as you say that, it's so obvious.
Perfect marriage.
And it has that kind of mechanical... anybody who's followed the podcast since day one, there's a reason why one of our trailers has that kind of... that Terminator-esque sort of style music. Because it's so iconic and it's so perfect marriage for that for that intellectual property. And that's why it just annoys me so much when people change it, because it's like they forget why people love the music.
You could totally bring out the 80s synths for a modern Terminator movie and it would work. It 100% would work. I mean, if you wanted to update the synths, you could, but there's no need. Like you say, it's the perfect marriage. It's of its time, but it's also of the future. So it can be. There's no danger in continuing that into movies as you move forward. You know.
And I get the idea of trying to put your own spin on things and trying to change things, but there has to be some kind of
like an anchor. Yeah, there has
to be somebody or something going. Here is that thing that you love, and I mean we'll get into it as we go through the episode. There are some elements in later installments where you can see that they were trying to do the right thing, but there's also some points where they go and they've missed the point entirely.
I tell you what, I was watching it yesterday, and as you do, like you say, we'll get into sequels and stuff, but I started thinking, like, I know which Terminator film I want to watch after this, and it's not 2, and I love 2. I wanted to watch Terminator Salvation, the much maligned Terminator Salvation. I really wanted to watch that after I watched the first one. It feels like such a natural successor. And that's not to say I love 2. I'm not handbagging on 2. 2 is probably the best out of all of them. We'll get into it, I'm sure. But I had a hankering to go watch Salvation. I think I wanted more of that future exposition, more of that grit, more of that dirt.
I totally understand and agree with that. You know, we've spoken about it, and I think I mention it to anybody whenever we talk about Terminator. For me, I think Terminator 2 is perhaps the pinnacle of action movies. However, it killed the franchise. Yeah. It was the thing that started the descent in the franchise, and we're exploring, get onto why that was kind of later on. But just going back to, I suppose we probably should go through the plot for anybody who hasn't.
Has it got a robot in
it? So, a cyborg is sent from the future on a deadly mission. He has to kill Sarah Connor, a young woman whose life will have great significance in years to come. Sarah has only one protector, Kyle Reese, also sent from the future. The Terminator uses his exceptional intelligence and strength to find Sarah, but is there any way to stop the seemingly indestructible cyborg? You said it earlier. That's a very, very good concept straight away.
It's an amazing concept.
I mean, obviously, since Terminator, there's been those B-movie rip-offs like The Exterminator or Cyborg and things like that. And even if it's a bad B-movie equivalent or version, it's still something I would want to see because it sounds like a cool concept.
Well, they got in a bit of legal trouble, didn't they, with the concept from an Outer Limits episode from the program Outer Limits.
Really?
Called I Have No Mouth But I Need to Scream. I think that's what it's called.
That's a good title.
Now, I could be wrong. My understanding of it is the geezer who is a good title, actually, isn't it? It's future. The nuclear weapons have dropped. There's no Terminators in it, but it's the concept's very similar. And the person who wrote it sued. And if you look, it was on my copy, based on an idea by, and it says the fella's name. I forget his name. I do apologise. Because he said he got a chunk of change and his name put on future releases of it. I think they said it was inspired from it. I took the concept further. As far as I'm aware, his version didn't have killer robots. It may have had someone going back in time. I forget, but I think it was the Outer Limits is like the Twilight Zone kind of TV program from yesteryear, and I think that's where he picked up a thread and then expanded it out into what the Terminator became, you know what I mean? So I know he got in a little bit of trouble, but I think he was very open about it from day one. Like that's where the germ of it started. Now, I think from what I remember reading about it, the person who wrote the Outer Limits has a habit of screaming, "I've been ripped off left, right, and centre" about a lot of things. But I could be doing him dirty there. But I think ripped off is a little strong. I think like inspired by is definitely where it came from, and he just took it to another level with the Terminator movie.
I think it's really difficult to just have a totally 100% original idea.
In pure isolation.
You're going to be inspired by something, and you know, there's good ways of homaging things, and there's rip-off ways of doing it. Yeah. I don't think it does that in any respect. Having said that, I haven't seen the episode of the
No, I think I might dig it out, and I bet you it's creaky. You know what I mean? Yeah. I bet you can see it and you can't see it, if you know what I mean. That would be my guess, you know.
So, moving on to the cast, obviously we've mentioned Arnold Schwarzenegger.
No. Actually, I think
he's in the room.
I actually think this is the only Arnie film where he doesn't.
He only has like 17 lines.
And some of those are dubbed, right?
Yeah, some of them are... the Terminator has 17 lines, and 2 of them are him speaking as other characters.
Yeah. But I don't think is a very robotic noise to make.
I think he probably got into that a bit more when he was a bit more comfortable, a bit more of a movie star.
Well, no, he does it in Conan for sure, and he also punches a camel in Conan, which is amazing.
That sounds pretty cool.
But
it doesn't have none of that.
But it is the first outing of I'll Be Back.
Yeah, which interesting little tidbit on that. He had a real problem with that line.
Yeah, him and Cameron got into a row about it, didn't they? Yeah.
I mean, James Cameron sounds like the sort of guy who gets into a row about most things with most people. Doesn't make him any less of a genius, but...
just a bit of an a-hole.
You said that, not me. I love you, James. If you're listening, you're not listening.
No one's listening.
How cool would that be if James Cameron was listening to this?
Yeah. I'm sure you're lovely.
I mean, he's probably too busy making blue movies now.
That sounded weird. Movies with blue people, right?
Yeah. I realise American viewers won't know what the term blue means, but in the UK, blue is a euphemism for
a dirty film.
A dirty film.
Dirty.
He's selling blue movies out the back of his Transit, that sort of thing. I totally forgot where I was now.
Are you going to talk about the I'll Be Back line?
Yeah, I think obviously because of the I would say, I'm going to say language barrier, but it's not necessarily language barrier. I think it's just the intonation and the style of speaking that Schwarzenegger has. He really struggled saying the word "I'll," and obviously that created some kind of debate.
He kept insisting it should be "I will be back," didn't he?
Yeah, which
apparently Cameron said to him, "Do I tell you how to act?" He was like, "No." He's like, "Well, don't tell me how to effing write." Say the line.
I mean, there's so much arrogance in that statement, but it just makes me love that guy even more.
It is a good line, isn't it?
And he's totally right. If you go, I will be back,
it's rubbish.
It's over-laboured, isn't it?
And it became his catchphrase in every movie afterwards, probably to this day.
Which is really, really strange because it's so understated. It doesn't feel like an iconic line, if that makes any sense.
It's coupled with the way he comes back, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
He looks around, I'll be back.
Yeah.
And then drives a car straight through the reception. Yeah, right.
So, yeah, it has Arnold Schwarzenegger in the titular role playing the Terminator. And he's not referred to as like the T-1000, or he's just referred to as...
T-800, isn't it?
Not in this movie. He's just referred to as Cyberdyne Systems Model 101 in this movie. It's only in the later installments that they start bringing in T800, T1000, those kind of things.
Turned up for the role of Reese originally, didn't he?
He did.
And Cameron said he was looking at him. They went for a lunch meeting and he was saying, no. And Schwarzenegger kept talking about the robot. And Cameron said he was just looking at his face going... You make a good robot. You know what I mean? Yeah. And he said to him, I'm not really interested in you for the role of Reese, but do you want to play the Terminator? And he was like, no, I want to play a goodie. I don't want to play a baddie. And he said, well, you think about it. And I don't know if he said it to him. I've seen Cameron say it since, where he said it was his face. He was known for his body up until that point, and he realised, probably because Cameron told him, I think, this will all be on your face. It's all in your actions. Apparently he was saying things to him like, whoever gets this role, the motion should be that, and was literally explaining how he would play it. And apparently it took him a few days after that meeting to agree to play the Terminator.
What I think is really innovative about this is that I don't think anybody will sit down and say Arnold Schwarzenegger is a terrific actor. They will say
he's a terrific movie star.
He's a great movie star. But I think his performance in this is the thing that makes the film.
There's only one point where I feel like he breaks character. And I'm trying to remember exactly when it is. He gets out of the car. I think it's when he gets out of the car and takes the phone book off. That gives you got a real attitude, brother, man. And it's the way he moves as he gets out the car, as he goes across the front. It's the only time he walks like a normal person. And I think that's probably just, again, down to budgetary sort of things. It's just one of those shots. The rest of the time, his movements, his acting in this movie, like you say, with no dialogue almost, is superb. That, like, the way he looks, left, right, fucking up.
And he said a naughty word.
Oh, no, but I'm going to have to go and edit it out now.
I mean, to be fair, spoilers for the next episode. There's going to probably be a bit of blue talk in there.
There's going to be a lot of swearing. So, we'll put a fair warning at the beginning of that one.
But yeah, as you said, I think a lot of it came from Schwarzenegger as opposed to from James Cameron. That kind of element of performance. And actually, when you think about it, it's on the money and it's absolutely perfect. And I don't think a lot of people would have. I don't think a lot of people would have done that with that performance.
Considered it that deeply.
No, I think.
And you wouldn't expect that from Arnie either.
No,
at that point in his career, it's not what you think of him.
You think of him as just going,
it.
Okay, he's going to look good. He's going to be the action star. He's going to blow some stuff up. But it's I think it's a credit to him, and that's one of the reasons I think why it pushed him into the stratosphere, as well as it being a bloody good movie. So. It's also got, and I've never quite known how to say this guy's name, Michael Bean? Michael Byrne? It's the H, it really throws me. And we're probably never going to be able to move past this.
Mr. Bean.
Wow, that's a very different movie, isn't it?
Bien, isn't it? Michael Bien?
Yeah, something like that.
This happens every
I'm just going to refer to him as Kyle Reese. Because he plays Kyle Reese. We've got Linda.
He's great in this movie. He's superb.
The first thing I thought was, I'm so surprised he didn't become as big of a star as I thought he would be. He would always be
Hicks for me from Aliens.
Those two movies should have been his foot into being in everything as Tom Cruise. Or
he got into some legal stuff with Aliens 3 though, didn't he? Now I don't know for sure.
I think a lot of people got into some legal stuff with Aliens 3.
Well, I don't know for sure, but I know when you get to the point where you're like suing film studios, I would imagine that puts a bit of a damper on your
you're burning
career.
bridges whilst you're on
They
them.
used his likeness without his permission in Aliens 3, and he sued them. And I think it put...
Quite topical where we are right now with the SAG-AFTRA strike and the use of AI. How on topic this whole film is.
But yeah, he's great in this movie, and he's great in Aliens. He's always Hicks to me. But he's superb in this movie.
He's Kyle Reese
a terrible stalker. He is the least subtle stalker in the world. Like, dude. Some espionage training might have gone.
There's Sarah Connor now. Okay,
I'm just going to stare at her really creepily while she walks past me.
Be subtle. She's walked past me. I'm going to go with her. It's so like
let's stare at her from across a bar. Yeah.
As we've just mentioned, Sarah Connor is played by Linda Hamilton. Again, probably another person who I think I would have thought would have been in more things from this. She's great in it. And we speak a lot about female characters, and sometimes female characters scream, and that's all they're there for. They're there to provide the peril. But here, she's not that. It's that the character arc from the start of the movie to the end of the movie is one of the best things about this film, and character arcs in general is one of the best things about this film.
Yeah, you do see her find her feet as the potential mother to the saviour who she's supposed to train to become this great. You see that happen towards the end of the film, but she's great. Like you say, she doesn't spend a lot of the film shrieking and being a damsel in distress particularly. She is out of her depth, as anyone would be in that situation at the beginning, but she comes to it pretty quick, you know what I mean? She finds her feet fairly steady, and it is a good, well-rounded character, you know what I mean? She's got depth, you know. The
best example of that is when she first kind of figures out, I may be a target here for what at that point they think is a serial killer killing Sarah Connors. First thing she does, I'm going to go into a really busy nightclub. That's a really intelligent move to make, and to the point where when she rings up Lieutenant Traxler, he says, get yourself somewhere where there's lots of people, and I'm at Tech Noir, you know. Tech Noir, great name for a club.
I know, right? Stands out a lot. It's like, did they have techno back then? Or was that just like, I didn't know they had techno in 1984.
When you hear James Cameron talk about these things, and he just says something like Tech Noir, dark side of technology,
right?
And it's like, this guy's a genius. It's so. Yeah. It sounds cool, which is one element of it, but there's actually a meaning. It's not just, that sounds cool, let's do that.
Yeah, I just assumed it was a play on techno. I was like, did they have techno music in 1984? Like Tech Noir, like Vince Noir, you know? Yes, that's good, man. She makes the right decision, and it's the opposite decision anyone in any movie ever makes. Is to go to a public place. Normally they run down a side alley and then get murdered, don't they? Or whatever,
exactly. You know? And that leads us on to a topic that I think we're going to raise later. But, you know, is this a sci-fi film, or is it a horror film, or is it both? We'll talk about that. Obviously, I mentioned Lieutenant Traxler. That's played by Paul Winfield.
He's amazing in this. Yeah.
Some humour in there. So it's not always...
This film has little humour just dotted in it throughout it.
I just love the, how do I look? He's
awful.
Yo, mama. And even the thing, pass me a cigarette, and then I've already got one.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. This film has little bits of humour peppered throughout. The blouse... I'm going to rip off the buttons of your blouse.
Sarah?
Yeah, and then hands in front of me, just go straight back into it. I'm going to rip first. I'm going to rip every button off your blouse.
It's brilliant,
She's like, it's the creep. You know what I mean? Little moments like that are superb. And there's even like the later on in the film where the dude's knocking on the Terminator's door, and it's like select response. F you a-hole. It's like goes through a list and then pulls that one out. Yeah.
It would be very easy to just go full steam ahead into the action, the sci-fi, the horror, and not have that element of light humour. I think it balances it incredibly well.
If you put too much in, it becomes a comedy film.
It becomes Terminator 2.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we get onto that.
Yeah. But not enough. Just a little bit in there is it just balances out.
It's like the seasoning.
It gives you a little relaxer before we get back into the action.
The right amount of it makes it better. Too much of it overpowers it. Next to Lieutenant Traxler, we have Vukovic, played by Lance Henriksen.
Superb as well. Those two together are the most 80s cops in any 80s film I've ever seen.
I mean, I kind of want to see a buddy cop film about
right.
It's like
in it. Yeah.
Traxler and Vukovic. It's like Miami Vice for sci-fi.
I hate the weird ones. Like they are the most. They are so good. Like I forget he's in it, and then I remember before he turns up. I remember he's in it, and then it's always a joy when he's on the screen. Is him and what's his name? I wrote it down because Dick Miller, who turns up in this film, is the geezer in the pawn shop selling guns.
Yeah.
I love that actor. He again, another actor that hasn't done much. He's in
just
Gremlins.
What you see, pal.
Yeah. So such a good scene as well. But yeah, him as an actor, I love him. He's obviously in Gremlins, what he's most famous for.
Yes,
But yeah, don't see him in much. But he's in it for like 3 minutes, I think, in this film.
It's that. Uzi
9mm.
Yeah.
Hey, you really know your guns.
Hey, you can't do that in here.
Wrong.
It's just brilliant. And then lastly...
Again, kind of a comedy moment, isn't it? You know, kinda. Yeah.
It's dancing that line between cool and funny.
Yeah.
And I think that's why that Terminator character became so beloved and became... eventually the hero of the piece. And finally, I mean, there are, obviously you mentioned the pawn shop guy. Probably a little glimpse into, excuse me, into some later installments, but Earl Bone plays Dr. Silberman.
He's so good in this movie.
He's there for that light humour. Yeah. It's just, he's absolutely... And they push that in later installments as well.
Particularly in 2, isn't it? Yeah.
Oh, excuse me.
Cool.
I think he's great in it. I think a lot of actors would look at that and go, "Oh, it's only a small role," but you get those performers who kind of know what they're there to do, and they know the job that they perform and the function that they're there for. Yeah,
he skirts unpleasant. Quite well. He's very close to being quite repugnant, but pulls it back just enough so you still like him, you know.
And the cast of characters in here is, I mean, it's essentially a triple threat is the main crux of the film, the Terminator, Kyle Reese and Sarah Connor.
Yeah.
But those other kind of small supporting characters kind of get you along the movie where it doesn't ever feel like... Because there are elements, and I think actually Brad Fiedel, the composer, he has got quite a funny story where when he was being pitched being asked to do the composing for this, they gave him the film to watch. And he was like, he was saying that James Cameron had this idea, had this concept, and often when they're pitched, directors will say, "Oh, this, and this is all of this kind of idea I've got here." And you watch the movie, and you can't see any of it apart from there's that snippet of it there. But everything that James Cameron explained and all of his concept was visible and was on screen. But there was one point where Brad Fiedel really wanted to be, asked to do the composing for it, and he's watching the film, and towards the end, I think it's when just after the semi-truck explodes, and I think it does that shot where you kind of know what's going to happen because of the way it's shot, in the sense of they're not Kyle Reese and Sarah Connor, they're not in the centre of the screen, they're kind of bottom left off to the side, so you kind of know something's going to happen. And apparently Brad Fiedel thought he was saying this in his head, but ended up saying out loud, "If he gets up again, I'm out of here." And apparently he was like, why did I say that? I've just lost it.
Yeah.
Oh well, it was nice while it lasted, but luckily it didn't turn.
Luckily, Cameron didn't have any money.
Much.
Sorry, he'll have to do.
Yeah, and that's what I was kind of saying.
There is that thing to it. There is, because he does
keep coming,
but that is the whole point of it.
It's the whole point of it. And as I say, those characters, those cast of characters that just supplement everything, is what keeps it from feeling over-laboured and too long and here we go again, because you've got those little kind of things where they are quite almost meaningless characters, really. They don't really affect the story in any real way. They're just kind of there for the ride. I think without that, and it's just, an hour and 45, an hour and 50 of just cat and mouse could feel a little bit too much. So I think those
start dragging after a while.
Yeah, and I think that's a testament to the writing of it, where you could go full in on the concept and not really have any points where it breaks away from that.
Did the lady who co-wrote this go on to write The Matrix as well? Because I keep seeing her saying it's the same story on TikTok. I keep seeing a video of her saying, it's the same story. It's just a continuation of the Terminator story. And then she starts talking about Jesus a lot.
Okay.
I can't explain it any more than that.
I think it sounds pretty simple to me.
Yeah. I'm sure she had a hand in the Matrix movies. I could be wrong.
And, we've spoken about the cast, and we've just said about, and as with ever, can't speak now. As with ever on these things, casting is pretty much everything. Get it wrong, you've got a terrible movie. Get it right, you've got something people do podcasts about. So we've got some would-be castings. So I'm going to throw some names out at you and who they would have played, and we can discuss whether or not we think they would work. It's kind of
I'm laughing already.
I like to build tension with these things.
I know. These might be good. No,
I mean, this one is a very, very, very near miss. If this had happened, it would have ruined the film.
Oh, okay.
And I think everybody...
I bet I know this one. Okay.
Everybody probably knows this one, but O.J. Simpson.
Yeah.
I think... if he had have played the Terminator, here's how he would have done it.
Yeah. Have you seen the Arnie documentary on Netflix? He talks about it.
I haven't yet.
And he said they decided not to go with AJ because they didn't believe he could convincingly play a killer. And then everyone making the documentary starts laughing. And I'm like, should you be laughing now?
It's just one of those... As I say, it was a near miss.
Yeah.
Because I think, much like when anybody who's casting anything, we spoke about this a little bit with Kevin Spacey. We spoke about it with Harvey Weinstein and these things. When anybody's in something and they do horrible things out of it, it's very difficult to enjoy that movie.
Yeah.
It's
very hard to separate the things, isn't it? Yeah.
So... But,
I mean, apart from the Naked Gun franchise, I don't know much of OJ's acting work.
I mean, he's good. He's good in the Naked Gun films.
Yeah.
But
doesn't have much to do in them, though, does he?
He wouldn't have applied that same in-depth thought about it as we discussed earlier that Arnold Schwarzenegger did. He would have just...
I see TV movie in my brain.
That's the thing. It screams, sci-fi channel at 4:00 in the afternoon, doesn't it?
Channel 5, 5 in the morning.
I mean, here's a role that I think could have worked. And again, I apologise on the pronunciation of his name, but Jürgen Prochnow or Prochnov. He was in Doom.
You've got a picture of him.
I've got a picture of him there.
I'm being handed. I feel like
because
I feel like I'm a policeman now.
I wouldn't remember who he is.
Top left.
Top left.
I've seen him in things.
I think he's in Dune. The original, not the new one with Timothy Chalamet.
Yeah. I have not watched the new one. I probably won't. I do recognise him though.
I think he has
bloke from Stuff. Yeah.
That brilliant film Stuff. I think he has a menacing look which feeds itself into the role quite nicely. It's very difficult to just picture anybody other than Arnold Schwarzenegger in this role because he's so iconic.
It's iconic, yeah. It's impossible, yeah.
So Michael Byrne, Kyle Reese, the actor who played Kyle Reese.
Hicks. Kevin's mum.
He almost didn't get the role of Kyle Reese.
Oh, right.
Because he was auditioning for a production of Cat on a Hot Tin Roof. And he auditioned for Kyle Reese. And James Cameron and I think the casting director were like, we really like his performance. We just don't want him to have a southern accent because we feel like that makes him, it regionalises him. Right. Whereas if he's from the future, we don't think he would have a regional accent. And Hicks was like, I don't have a southern accent, but he'd been working so much on it.
Stuck, was it?
Yeah.
Because you're saying that, I'm sitting there going, has he got a southern accent?
He hasn't got a southern accent.
He's got an accent.
It's just because he was working on Cat on a Hot Tin Roof.
Interesting.
Ironically, he didn't get that role either.
Because his southern accent was so unconvincing.
I say either. He did end up getting Kyle Reese, but he almost didn't get Kyle Reese.
They're like, we don't believe your southern accents. It's not very good. And he's like, well, I've got a director and producer that would say otherwise. My southern accent is superb.
In the role of Lieutenant Traxler, again, small role, we have the names. Let's have a look. I've just lost mid-place. Professional outfit, Ryan. Edward James Olmos and Louis Gossett Jr. They were considered for the role of...
right, yeah.
So these two chaps there.
Have a look, because I know who Louis Gossett Jr.
I think Edward James Olmos, probably for more modern viewers, he was one of the killers in one of the latter seasons of Dexter. He was in the season where it was what's his name's son, Tom Hanks' son.
Oh, Colin
Hanks, his alter ego, who he thought was real. That wasn't he. That's probably where most people know him from. So in the role of the Terminator now, going back to the Terminator, Mel Gibson was apparently offered it and turned it down. I can't see that in the slightest.
He's tiny.
I mean,
Mel Gibson's he's not a tall man.
I mean, some of the castings for the Terminator kind of go back to the original concept of James Cameron's thinking was that he wanted the Terminator to be able to blend in, so he didn't look opposing or anything like that. And
much more Blade Runner.
It makes sense, and we've got that classic story of. Whilst he was never considered for the role and never auditioned for the role, Lance Henriksen, in his preparation for just working on the movie, he turned up to the offices of James Cameron and a couple of the other people working on the film in like a mock Terminator get-up. So he put like tinfoil over his teeth and he wore similar get-up to what's happening, and he acted like a robot, and apparently absolutely scared the living daylights out of the people there, because I don't think they knew who he was, because it was definitely, it wasn't before Aliens, so he wasn't in that. I don't think he was that well known at that point.
No, it's quite a small role, isn't it?
At least, perhaps for English audiences he probably wasn't. He may have been for American audiences, and I'm not sure. But because I didn't know who he was, it was like, there's this really weird dude. He's sitting in the reception right now, and he looks utterly crazy.
Yeah.
So that's quite a nice story. And moving on to the role of Sarah Connor, we have Deborah Winger, apparently successfully auditioned for the role.
Oh, right.
But later changed her mind and turned the role down.
Oh.
Jennifer Jason Leigh was seriously considered for the role.
Oh.
But she apparently was too young for the part.
I was going to say, I didn't even think she was around in 1984.
Yeah. Which is weird, because if they're playing an 18-year-old...
yeah.
But apparently James Cameron saw her as being too young. And she was actually later cast as Ginger, the roommate of Sarah Connor.
Right.
But then had to pull out. So we didn't see Jennifer Jason Leigh in that role. And she was replaced with Bess Motter, who played Ginger.
Right. When's Karate Kid? I suppose it's like 80.
Mid-80s, I think.
Yeah, it makes sense, actually, yeah.
I mean, this name isn't one that appears on our lists a lot because we haven't. But he's quite famous for almost being cast in another role.
Bob Hoskins.
Not Bob Hoskins. He's actually one person who's not on any of these lists.
I'll be back.
Give me your clothes, your boots, and your motorcycle.
Nice night for walk. What stay today? No clothes. What do you do in his Mario voice?
Another little in gag there for anybody who's been listening. But apparently, Tom Selleck was rumoured to be cast for the Terminator.
With his moustache.
Yes. Because apparently, the cyborgs, they like a little bit of facial hair. And unfortunately, again...
Tom Selleck, he's nearly played a few iconic roles in his life, hasn't
and
he?
again, for the same reason as Indiana Jones, who's nearly cast as, had to pull out because of Magnum P.I.
Wow.
So, you play a detective on...
Jeez. Has he ever spoken about this? Like, I'm glad I didn't play it, or I wish I'd played it.
I feel a bit sorry for him because I like Tom Selleck. I think he's great.
I don't buy him as a Terminator.
No.
His career does sound like it's full of a lot of missed opportunities, but I guess probably every
all
actor's
because of
career,
Magnum P.I., which, he was an all right programme, but...
It was pretty big when I was a kid, I think.
But, it's not The Sopranos, is it?
It's not the A-Team, you know what I mean?
Yeah. He ain't getting on no plane now, fool.
Yeah.
So I feel quite sorry for him. A name that we've obviously spoken about in previous episodes due to being in Beetlejuice and The Fly, Gina Davis, apparently, auditioned for the role of Sarah Connor.
She'd be amazing.
Gina Davis is pretty decent in anything.
Yeah, it's nothing she can't do.
She can't play a Terminator, though.
I think she'd play a Terminator really
And as soon as I said that, I was like, she could play a Terminator.
Imagine her in Terminator 3.
Oh, yeah, instantly better than Terminator 3, isn't it?
So good, right?
I'd take that back.
Yeah. She'd be great in it.
She was almost... she auditioned for the role of Sarah Connor. And obviously she co-starred with Linda Hamilton in Secret Weapons the following year.
Okay, so, I don't think I've seen it.
A little bit of a link there.
Yeah.
So, as we discussed earlier, Arnold Schwarzenegger was originally approached to play the role of Kyle Reese instead of the Terminator. So, some more names. So, in the role of Kyle Reese...
He's got a bit of a regional accent, though. In the future, everyone will sound like they come from Bavaria.
That is actually such a contradiction, isn't it? I don't want Michael Biehn because he's going to be...
He's too southern.
He's too southern. Give me that Austrian guy with the massive muscles.
Yeah.
Come with me if you want to live. He absolutely will not stop. Your Arnie's better than mine.
I don't know, but the thing is when you're doing Arnie, not you, but
you just got to commit to it.
You can really easily end up doing a really bad Jamaican accent if you're not careful.
Very similar to the Geordie accent. You can quite easily go into Jamaican. Yeah. So Bruce Willis.
Bruno as Kyle Reese?
Kyle Reese.
As Kyle Reese, yeah.
I mean, I can see it, but
he's too Bruce Willis though. He's got too much personality.
This would have been around Moonlighting and that.
Because the thing about Reese is you're not supposed to really able to read him for most of the film. You can't.
Yeah, he's quite guarded and closed off, isn't he?
Bruce Willis is Bruce Willis. You know, I've never seen Bruce Willis be anything less than like super charisma man. You know.
He's magnetic, isn't he?
Yeah, he's like
when he's on the screen.
He's got a charm, you know what I mean?
And I don't know how accurate some of these are because I look at them and go, "What if this was genuinely a thing?" Like, I mean, he has done acting, but apparently
he's done some acting.
So
Ronald Reagan, no.
Apparently Sting.
Oh, right. Okay.
Obviously, he was in Dune.
I mean, he looks a bit like Reese.
He looks the part, but
with his English accent.
I'd always be expecting him to whack out the bass and start playing a pretty decent bass line.
I don't drink coffee, I drink tea, my dear.
Sarah Connor, don't stand so close to me.
Also...
It's got to that stage in the podcast.
Also, strong accent.
Yeah.
He's the ace face.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, some other names.
Whenever I see Sting on screen, though, Have you ever seen the film Quadrophenia?
No.
He's in that. He plays the ace face in
Yes,
Quadrophenia.
he does, doesn't he? Yeah.
And at one point, Phil Daniels' character, Jimmy, just starts screaming bellboy at him because he sees he's got a job as a bellboy. Bellboy! And that's all, like, whenever I see Sting, so it goes through my head every time. Bellboy!
Kind of lowers your credibility slightly, doesn't it?
Every time he comes on screen as a Terminator. Bellboy! Yeah.
Some other names. So Matt Dillon.
As Reese.
These are all for Kyle Reese.
Yeah. I actually think Matt Dillon could do that.
I think he could.
Drugstore cowboy era Matt Dillon for sure.
I think he was a little bit too young in 84, though.
I guess so, yeah.
I mean, Rumblefish was 89,
such a good
I think.
movie.
And he's pretty young in that.
Late 80s as well.
So, I mean, Matt Dillon has one of those faces where he looks older than his years anyway.
He's got a classic face.
Yeah. Mickey Rourke. Pre all the Botox and everything.
And Mickey Rourke he's a bit too
He's a bit of an enigma to me.
He's a bit too...
Never get a read on him.
Yeah, a bit too much like Bruce Willis for me, I think, physically.
Christopher Reeve, Superman himself.
No.
I mean, the problem is you're just going to compare him to Superman, aren't you?
It's going to be Superman versus a Terminator at
you're
that point,
going to expect him to open his shirt and then... Dun, 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 dun.
It's going to be Superman versus the Terminator, isn't it?
That sounds like a good movie.
It won't be.
I'd watch it, though. Let's be honest.
Oh, yeah.
I'd pay good money for that. Kurt Russell.
It would be directed by Schneider, though. It'd be terrible. The movie you've always wanted to see, done badly. But it's all right. It's a 4-hour-long cut of it if you want.
In black and white. Yeah. Just to be pretentious.
Yeah.
I just randomly said the name halfway through your speech on there. Kurt Russell.
Kurt Russell. I
like Kurt Russell. I think he could do well in that role.
How old would Kurt Russell be at that point?
So this would have been around the sort of time as Escape from New York. It's early 80s.
He's got so much charisma, though. Again, I don't want to keep labelling them all with the same fault, but Kurt Russell is Kurt Russell. I love Kurt Russell. He's amazing, but he's like an electric light bulb. You know what I mean? He shines, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I'd like to see him in the role, just to see what he could do with it.
To be fair, I am comparing him to Michael Biehn's to Hicks's performance. So, I mean, it's trying to view it in its own right, I suppose. Maybe.
And then the last one, this is for the role of Sarah Connor. Mm-hmm. Rosanna Arquette, who played Jodie in Pulp Fiction.
Yeah, probably.
I think when you get an iconic movie like this, it's really difficult to see anybody in the roles.
You're comparing performances rather than thinking them of them as a different version. You compare the performance, and you.
Of pop culture, searching the past for the key to change the future, to save mankind from the fate it has already written. They would document this journey for future generations to learn from. That document would come to be known by all of humankind as a podcast like no other. Ryan Etherington and James S. Murphy have no reason, no fear, and no common sense. They will not ever stop watching classic movies until they have saved the world from boredom. Ryan Etherington and Jimmy Murphy have come to bury our bones. movies and television.
So those were some of the would-be castings. I think casting on the whole, they got pretty spot on here.
There isn't one there isn't one that I want to change. Do you know what I mean? When I watch it, I don't think,
I think
he's letting the team down.
I mean, you
could
could change the roles of Lieutenant Traxler and Vukovic.
I don't want to, though.
I don't want.
Yeah.
I'm with you on that. I think you could change them, and it wouldn't make too much of a difference because they're not very big. But
it brings in that little moment of brevity, and that little bit of lightness comes in when they come in. And like you say, there are other actors that are capable of doing that, but it's done so well, you know.
So shall we move on to some other little trivia tidbits about the making? So the Terminator vision, for lack of a better phrase, when it's through the perspective of the Terminator, obviously looks quite futuristic, looks pretty cool, was actually taken from the coding from the Apple II operating system.
Oh, right.
Apparently so. It shows a dump of the ROM assembler. So anybody who does any coding or any technical stuff will know what that means. To me, that may as well be a different language.
Yeah.
But again, it fits, doesn't it? It doesn't. It looks pretty futuristic.
Yeah. Yeah.
At the same time, it's not.
It's interesting. I kept waiting for it to pop up throughout the films. I couldn't remember when it first does it. And then it does it, and I'm like, oh yeah. I remember, like, the first time I saw that, I remember being really taken with it. You know what I mean? Like, oh, that's what you see. That's what the Terminator sees. Oh, you know, it's like, it's a nice, again, it's those little touches in a movie. It's those little touches, like the fact at the beginning of the movie where, like, they think it's a serial killer knocking off Sarah Connor's, they're calling him the phone book killer and all this sort of stuff. Yeah.
Such a blasé way of saying it.
I hate the weird ones. Yeah, and they're naming him the phone book killer, aren't they? And I think it's just that in itself is a really nice touch in the movie. It just adds a little bit, that the fact that he's going through the phone book one by one, and the fact that they all cotton onto it quite quickly as well. The police, and even Sarah Connor goes when is it the second time she hears that Sarah Connor's been killed?
Yeah, she goes to the phone book.
They say the middle names. Sarah Ann Connor, Sarah Connor, Sarah Ann Connor. I think she's Sarah J. Connor. And she goes, first thing she does is go to the phone book and see she's next on the list. Now, I don't think it's mentioned in the TV, on the news report, that they think it's got something to do with the phone book. They just say the names and she goes straight to the phone book. Lovely little touch.
It's another example of that intelligence, isn't it, that I was saying about earlier with Sarah Connor's character, where she's not just... she's not
screaming
ditzy, blonde bimbo who's just, there to provide some screaming. I think it's those small little bits of attention to detail that really kind of elevate it and allow it to hold up after 40 years. I think the concept, I think a lot of things have kind of mimicked it since, and obviously not done it to the same degree. And the reason why they perhaps don't quite is because of those things where it's just a cyborg who trying to kill you, as opposed to here's the backstory, here's these little nuances and these little bits that actually, as you say, give it brevity and add to the overall arc of the story. Would you like to know what the title was changed to in Poland?
Yeah.
So
only always. Yeah.
So the reason why it was changed, just for a bit of context, is because the word Terminator in Polish apparently is translated and means an apprentice.
Okay.
Which
it's not going to work.
It's mind blowing. So they changed the name of the title to The Electronic Murderer.
Lovely.
Which just sounds like a great movie, doesn't it? By the time that Terminator 2 came out, it had been enough in their lexicon that they kind of knew that it could also mean. So they just referred to that.
I was in Spain when Terminator 3 came out, and I can't for the life of me tell you what the Spanish is for Rise of the Machines, but the adverts were on TV constantly. And to this day, I just have Terminator 3, Eradora Makino. I can't remember what the actual words are. Makino, Terminator 3 in my head.
I mean, your Spanish is a lot better than mine.
That was just gibberish. It wasn't even words. I could order a beer.
It convinced me. Like, literally, I thought you were speaking Spanish for a minute. My Spanish means putting L in the front of any phrase.
Yeah, and that might be considered problematic in this day and age.
Exactly, which is why I'm not going to do it on this podcast.
Someone once told me, I don't know, you're probably about to get this, I'm probably jumping, that they had to dub Arnie's voice in Germany because his accent would be the equivalent of talking like that, right?
I didn't know that.
Someone told me
that is hilarious.
Because I'm a killing machine, right? Guess it's like farmyard, like where he's from Bavaria is like the Hicksville.
Wow.
And like they just couldn't have a killing robot walking around with that accent all the time.
Your clothes.
I'd like an Uzi 9mm, please. Give me your clothes, your boots, and your motorcycle.
Just sounds so much less threatening, doesn't it?
It doesn't, will it? Nice night for a walk. What's they got new clothes?
To be fair, that would kind of make you go, oh yeah, all right, here are my clothes.
Yeah, that's what someone told me once. I had to dub his accent because his accent, I had to dub his voice because his accent is like a farmer's accent.
That's a comedy skit waiting to happen, isn't it?
I know, right?
Which, if you've been listening to the podcast, you know we love a comedy skit.
We do love a skit. It could happen. I mean, yeah.
I think, obviously...
we haven't actually mentioned it yet, actually, but Bill Paxton is in that scene, also later to be an alien.
Hey, man!
Yeah.
I mean, that is Bill Paxton in everything.
So good, with his blue punk haircut. Also in that scene, I don't know whether I should bring this up or not, I never noticed it until I got the Blu-ray, Arnie's wang is in that scene. When he's walking towards them, there's how can I put it, an extra piece of Terminator on view, you know? It's quite disturbing.
I've just got this image of the Terminator, like Cyberdyne and Skynet creating Terminators and going, like, in their AI, well, we have to give them a massive penis. Like, we can't have
a killing machine with a small wang. Yeah.
It just has to be massive.
Yeah, it's in there. It's out there, I should say.
I have to say, I didn't notice it, but then I wasn't looking for it. And now that you've mentioned it, I'm going to go back.
It was right in front of me,
and I'm gonna go and watch and look at
watch that opening scene again.
Arnie's wang.
Yeah.
So thanks for that.
It's there for all to see. I don't think it was there in like the earlier versions. I think it was darker, so you don't notice it so much.
I've got an image of there's one guy and it's his job to superimpose a bigger knob onto Arnie.
I just think with the advent of like HD and Blu-ray, I think something was lost in the mist. How does
that conversation go? So we're bringing out it's called high definition, so everything needs to look a lot more crisp. Basically, we need you to just go back through the film The Terminator and just make some adjustments. Oh, okay, is that like, making sure some textures look right? And there's a... Kind of. We need you to superimpose a wang onto the Terminator.
It's already there. They just lightened the stock.
Excuse me, can you just
his stock?
Can you just lighten the saturation over the penis area, please?
Yeah, and there it is, bouncing about.
Wow.
No. Nice night for a walk. New clothes.
Oh, God.
Sarah Connor.
I mean, I didn't think it would be this early into our podcast that it would essentially descend into speaking about knobs.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't sure whether to bring it up or not, but it's there, man. The Terminator's most potent killing machine on display for all to see.
It's probably some form of weapon.
Yes. Yeah, T2, slightly.
Judgment Day.
This has gotten weird.
I'm going to move on now. Obviously, we spoke about the budget, and we spoke about, obviously, for the style of film, it's a fairly low budget affair. So apparently James Cameron kind of put everything on this. You know, he was really...
So did Arnie.
I just left that door wide open for you, didn't I? I set him up, you knock him down. As did Arnie with his massive wang. So, trying to move into...
Wow.
Is that Arnie or is that the wang?
Hey, you know where that noise comes from.
Well, I suppose we don't have to worry about humour in this episode, do we?
But whatever you do, don't swear.
Yeah. Oh, we have our standards, don't we? So yeah, he banked a lot on this, being successful.
Didn't it come from a fever dream, didn't it?
Something like that.
He had flu or something. And
I mean, we hear stories about these things happen in people's dreams. We spoke about Spielberg with Poltergeist and those, the tree and the clown were things that he dreamt about and scared him. So, I think a lot of the time our dreams are kind of just endless kind of creative escapes to just explore things.
Do you know the story about Cameron and the Predator? The Predator film was being made, and originally the puppet was awful, and it was Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Right. Big red
so bad, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think they hired a new special effects. I don't think it was the same special effects bloke. I forget. He's a legend, and I apologise, I can't remember his name off the top of my head. And he was on a plane, and on the plane was James Cameron, and he was sketching stuff out, and Cameron said to him, "What you working on?" And he told him, and Cameron went, "Do you know what I've always wanted to see? Mandibles." And boom, the Predator was born.
Wow.
Yeah. So all the dreadlocks and fishnet stockings, that was this other fella, right?
I've never made the connection to fishnet stockings.
He definitely has fishnet stockings on.
There's definitely some fetishes being explored in that, isn't it?
Yeah. Got sandals on, fishnet stockings.
Maybe that's the new Predator. They just need to put socks with the sandals.
yeah. But yeah, the mandibles, apparently it was Cameron. I've always wanted to see mandibles. And he went, "Oh, that's a good idea." And thus the Predator was
brilliant,
born.
Isn't it? But yeah, he really needed this to be a success. Apparently, he was living in his car.
Wow.
He didn't have, didn't have a home, and he was kind of, wherever they were shooting, go park up somewhere and I'll sleep in the car.
Yeah.
And you do hear that quite a lot with directors who would.
Didn't Cameron cut his teeth making blue movies? Or at least raunchy.
I think there was a Piranha film I think he made.
No, I thought he learnt his trade on blue movies.
Well, now the conversation we just had makes even more sense, doesn't it?
Unless I'm remembering that wrong. I'm sure that's how he learnt his trade on sort of slightly raunchy movies. I apologise if that's wrong.
Well, I haven't been able to verify that, but perhaps he did. Perhaps.
While he slept in his car. That's interesting. I didn't know he was that down on his luck when he was making Terminator.
Yeah, I think it was just a case of he put everything into the film. There's even the story of when they were making it, after it started to become a success, obviously he held the rights to it.
Nice.
And he sold the rights to Catherine Bigelow's wife. I don't know if his wife at the time, but his girlfriend at the time.
Yeah.
Subsequently became his wife. Catherine Bigelow sold the rights to it for $1.
Wow.
And was like, that way it doesn't go in the hands of the corporate machine. And Catherine Bigelow, just little shout out, she's a great director in her own right.
Okay.
Strange Days.
Right.
She won an Oscar for the Hurt Locker.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, she's a great director in her. And to be fair, if you're married to James Cameron, just listening to him, not that I'm saying her skill comes from James Cameron, but just having
I'm
that
sure he would have been attracted to the talent
creative
in her as well.
element of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, apparently he sold the rights to it for $1, and then,
which is why we've never had any terrible sequels.
I think after the second one came out,
not quite work.
She then sold him back to him for something like 20 million or something, because he had the money then.
Yeah.
I just think it's, I think that comes across that there's so much riding on this that almost every element there's so much thought and effort that goes into it. And I think that's where, we've spoken about a little bit in general terms the sequels. I think that's where most of the sequels kind of fall down, is that they don't have that passion and that kind of that focal point of somebody going, you know what, this has to work, and I've got this singular vision, and I'm going to do everything. Yeah.
I mean, the sequels scream of studio interference. They scream of made by committee, but it's not the second one, obviously, because Cameron don't put up with that sort of stuff. By the time I don't like the third film. I don't think it's very good.
The only thing I like about the third film is the ending.
When Judgment Day actually happens,
where that happens, I think that was a bold move. I think it would have been very easy for, as you say, studio meddling to have a happy ending. And I
didn't like the casting.
Yeah, Nick Stahl wasn't particularly great as John Connor. I mean, Claire Danes, she's a great actress.
She's a great actor. Yeah.
I didn't really particularly like. I mean, I think across the board it was just.
I especially didn't like the Elton John glasses joke at the beginning. I don't like the third film. Like Salvation.
Salvation, I think is great.
The much maligned Salvation is a great movie.
It we spoke about earlier about doing something different. I think by that point it had to do something different because we'd seen essentially 3 films of the same formula, 1 and 2, but the second one you kind of still on board. Just banged my watch on the desk if you heard any clanging there, because I'm getting so irate. By the end of the second one, you're looking for something a little bit different by that point. Third one just does the same again, not as well, but it picks up where the second one left off in the terms of, I said earlier about Terminator 2 being the death of the franchise, and what I mean by that is that there's kind of a twofold reason. One is that it's so good that every subsequent installment is trying to get to that level again, and unfortunately with any film that is well loved and is high regarded, it's capturing lightning in a bottle, and it's not going to happen. The only way really I think you can properly kind of capture that same magic is to do something different and take it in a new direction and do something a little bit.
You have to be brave, because that's the thing though. You think about the second film, it is a completely different direction from the first film. Is the first film a horror movie? Is it a sci-fi movie? The second film's an action movie through and through. It's a sci-fi action movie.
Everything's bigger and better, isn't it?
100%.
It's
first film, it's sci-fi horror. It has those horror elements. It has the jump scares. It has you think he's dead, he's not dead 101 times.
It has the final girl.
It has so many, and it's instead of a man in a mask like a la Michael Myers, who cannot be stopped, who cannot be reasoned with, who cannot be stopped, whatever, is a remorseless killing machine. It's a robot from the future, so it's a sci-fi version of Michael Myers, essentially, fleshed out and made into something completely different. Whereas the second film, it has those similar elements, but it's an out-and-out action movie. So it is a completely different approach from the first film to the second film. Like you say, it killed the franchise because no one can move past it. You have to be brave enough to try and do something different. I'm not going to mention Aliens. We all know it. You know what I mean? If you don't know it, look into what Alien 3 was supposed to be and what it ended up with. No fault of Fincher's, and in Terminator, like you say, you get to Salvation and you finally get someone saying, let's not keep making bad versions of Terminator 2. Let's put it in the future. Let's show John Connor. Let's show robots. We've got technology that can do this now. Let's do it. And I think it's a good movie. It's bleak, which I think is the main criticism leveled at it. It's like 20 miles of bad road. There's not much humor in it and all that sort of stuff. That's not what I was looking for when I watched it. I love that movie. I especially like the surprise ending where the T-800 or whatever it is they're calling it at that point turns up, and it's like it's around that birth of really good. We've stuck his face. I haven't seen it in a while. I wonder if it still holds up. At the time, it was superb. You're like, oh my god, there's Arnie's face on, and it's old Arnie's face. It's not. The young Arnie's face, older
with the side part in.
Yeah, and it's superb. And I was like, I remember watching that in the cinema and just being like, oh, no way, that's amazing. Got panned. Didn't do another one after it, and then you get to Genesis,
which there's like 5 minutes.
Ooh, bad.
There's 5 minutes where it's like, okay, I can get on board with this.
The beginning 5 minutes.
The beginning 5 minutes, because it's essentially it's.
Is that, hang on, is Genesis the one where they go back and they replay the first?
Yeah, they redo number one.
Yeah,
for the
that
first
bit
5
is
minutes.
Amazing. That is so.
And I think that's where James Cameron produced. I think he came back on board.
Is that Genesis the one that he was saying this is
and
a
that
really
was
good
that
movie.
was the one that I think that element where he kind of had some input into that opening sequence.
Because the way they redo that opening sequence is fantastic.
It's fantastic, and then it's ruined instantly by. I mean, you've got Emilia Clarke playing Sarah Connor, and I think
it's bad casting.
It's bad casting. I think they casted her because she was big.
Game of Thrones.
It was like a big name.
Yeah.
And
not Emilia Clarke's a great actress. She is not Sarah Connor though.
No,
it just doesn't fit. And again, it's the same with Terminator 3. That dude is not John Connor to me. It's the cast. Like we always say, casting is so important. Like we're saying in this instance, there isn't anyone I want to recast in that first Terminator movie. You can if you want, but I don't want to. You know, you get to Emilia Clarke as Sarah Connor, and you're like, who? That's reeks of bean counting. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That reeks of she'll bring an audience with her. Never mind whether she's right for the role. She'll bring those Game of Thrones geeks into the cinema, you know, which I don't think happened.
And the same with, what's his name? Matt, Doctor Who.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Him. I want to say Matt Berry, but it's not his name.
It's definitely not Matt Berry.
Give me... I can't know.
Father!
I'm here for the 50p massage.
I cannot place his name, but essentially...
Give me your boots!
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was cast as the kind of more villainous role in that, and then obviously you had the Jason Clarke played John Connor in that. I didn't think that was too bad a casting, but the script was terrible.
Is it Dark... What's the last one?
Dark Fate.
Dark Fate. It's not Dark Future, it's Dark Fate.
Yeah.
And that's when you see Terminator 2 Irani kill off, what's his name's John Connor, isn't it?
Edward Furlong.
Yeah. Who, was he ever even considered for Terminator 3? Was he in too much of a state at that point?
I think he was in a quite big state.
Yeah. Because he's not doing too well, is he, you know? Or wasn't around that period, I think. But
no.
Yeah, so casting's so important. Yeah, so sorry, Emilia Clarke, Terminator Dark.
Genesis. Yeah.
Genesis, sorry. Blimey, yeah, that's Genesis. Yeah, no, that opening sequence is amazing. And then, like you say, it falls off so quickly.
It's like for that first 10 minutes, they had that passion. They had that, let's do that and let's put a twist on it. And then the rest of it was just like, pseudo interference. It didn't make sense. John Connor's now the bad guy. What? That doesn't make any sense at all. Yeah. It just doesn't have any substance. And you know, going back to Terminator 2 killing the franchise, the one part of it is everything's trying to top it. The other part of it is putting. I think it's a genius move, but it also spells the downfall. Putting the Terminator in the role of the hero means that, you know, that comedy that we were talking about, the comedy elements for the Terminator are that he's ruthless and it's brutal, you know, like when he goes into the club and there's a dude who tries to stop him going in and puts his hand on him. I find that hilarious because it's the way he just grabs his hand, doesn't even he gives him a very quick glance, but it's just that get off me, what you doing, you know, that's funny, but not because it's played funny. As soon as you put him in the hero role, what happens? he starts having a catchphrase, hasta la vista baby. It's, trying to do the smile. And so all of those elements where you go...
Is that the third one where he's trying to smile?
No, the second one's where he's trying to smile.
The second one?
Yeah, he tries to smile and he looks at Edward Furlong and he does that weird kind of thing, which is quite funny. And it works in the context of Terminator 2.
Yeah.
But because of that, it then very quickly leads on to where you get to a Terminator 3 where he puts on the Elton John sunglasses and suddenly we're now laughing at this killing machine.
Yeah.
And so and I think as well...
Apparently Arnie got quite insistent that he wasn't shooting enough people in the sequel. And, the scene, he'll live... That was put in because Arnie was like, I haven't shot anyone, I need to shoot someone. and he's quite insistent, I'm Arnie, I shoot people, I should be shooting. They're like, well, you can't kill anyone. And that's when they wrote that scene, which is a great comedy moment. You said you wouldn't kill anyone, he'll live. Because he kneecaps him, I think, with his gun, doesn't he? Yeah, it's great stuff. But yeah, they say once you start introducing those elements of humour, you've
got to be very careful that
you're
it doesn't
walking
veer
a fine
into
line, aren't you?
Where it ends up going. And I think... I love the Terminator franchise, and I've said in many a time, if it's got Terminator on it, I'm paying to see it because I love the franchise. But I've had an idea knocking about as to how it should go. I think the first thing they need to do is they need to forget about Arnie, because
he's unfortunately too old now.
I think he was too old for 3.
I think I agree.
2, he was, I think, in his mid-40s. And so, but he still looks the part.
He looks good in that movie.
As soon as you get to 2003 and he's in his mid-50s, and you can just see he looks a little bit tired, and so that doesn't make sense in the context of an AI trying to create an ultimate killing machine. I think they try to explain it like he's an old model.
Why do they keep making the same looking model when they're supposed to blend in all the time? Because obviously in the first one... But also,
why do they make the old model but
older?
But yeah,
they try to explain this in, I think, in Genesis, don't they? Like the flesh ages, but the bit underneath doesn't, and all that sort of stuff.
You're finding a reason to accommodate.
You're
him,
making excuses. At that point, aren't you? That's right.
He's vital to the franchise
because they do a really good job in the first one. Actually, when we were talking about the scene earlier, when the Terminator breaks into their barracks in the future, when you're seeing it as a flashback of the future, she says this in a minute. You're talking about things I haven't done yet in the past tense, and it's driving me nuts. Yeah. Which is a great line. That Terminator is obviously not Arnie, but it's a Terminator. So you already go, oh, they look different. The Terminators look different. It makes sense. He still looks... He has a Arnie vibe about him because he's a big, muscular killing machine type thing. I know he's got his red eyes later on and all that. So they've set it up already that they don't all look the same. And then they keep pushing this premise of, oh, well, I sent the same one back, the same model back that tried to kill you in the first film for reasons unbeknownst. And then later on, they're like, oh, well, it's a familiar one, so we're sending a familiar one back. And they keep, like you say, making excuses as to why he's gotten older and why they have to send him back. And
I think, it insults the audience's intelligence, because we know that the reason why you're doing that is because you want to have Arnold Schwarzenegger in there, which I understand, he's a moneymaker, but there has to be a point where you go, he can't play that role anymore because he doesn't look the part.
How are you servicing the film? Is it for the film you're
or are you doing it for Arnie's paycheck? It's that. Yeah. And I think he's shrewd enough to know, I think he will do it because I think he likes the character, but I think he's shrewd enough to go, I don't need to do this anymore, and I don't think I should do this anymore.
He's like 70 something.
He's late 60s at the least. Don't have his exact age to me. But as I say, I've had this idea knocking about, and it surprises me that nobody's thought of this before, or at least thought of this and actually
hasn't come up like.
Because, so what I would do is, take what worked and add a little bit of a twist to it. So what worked about the first two is it's a Terminator being sent back to protect somebody. First one's Terminator going back. So what I would do is, first of all, recast the Terminator. And about 10 years ago, before The Rock became The Rock in everything.
Yeah.
When he was just starting out, I thought he's got the look. He doesn't need to do too much. He can kind of do it. Since that point, I've moved on from that idea.
You have to at this point, yeah.
And I would cast...
The Rock has already got to Terminator 2.
Yeah, you just expect him to do the people's eyebrow. I would cast, and for the life of me, I can't remember his name, but he's the dude who plays Reacher in the Prime series.
You've mentioned this to me before, and you're spot on.
There's literally a scene in there where he's just walking up a road, and I was watching it, and I was going...
I think, isn't it? Yeah.
I was going, hang on a minute, and I muted it and then played the Terminator music over the top, and I was like, that works for me. He's got that look. He's a good actor as well, so he can add those elements that Arnie did as well without it being just a carbon copy. So I'd cast him in the role of the Terminator, and I'd keep the Terminator being the villain of the piece. What I would do is, you keep sending them back to kill John Connor or to kill Sarah Connor. I would go back and have the AI figure out, okay, well, we can't kill John Connor. We've tried, that didn't work. We've tried to kill Sarah Connor, that didn't work. So let's try and kill Sarah Connor's mother. So you set it, so she's 18 in 84, so what, mid-60s? Yeah. Immediately...
It already sounds bad, but I know, already I hear a bad comedy, but sorry, carry on.
But immediately, you've differentiated it from something, it's the same concept, but it doesn't look exactly the same. I
agree with exactly what you're saying, but I would go mid-70s, and maybe, I mean then you're getting into child killing then, but it might be a bit too heavy. But no, I think you're right. I think the only problem I have is when you say mid-60s, I just hear a lot of bad hippie jokes in my head, sort of thing, like bad hippie acting. Like I see everyone walking around going, "Hey man," and all that sort of stuff. If you can avoid that,
the three punks in the 80s is going to be, "Hey man, don't worry." Avoid
smoking a big doobie. Hey, no clothes tonight, man. Watch night, bro. Yeah. If you can avoid those pitfalls, it would work elements, really well. Yeah,
because I think it differentiates itself from the 80s and from that look enough, but it's familiar because you've got that same concept. I think the more that they try to go forward in time and do it, like if you've done it in the 90s, it's not going to be too dissimilar from the 80s. Obviously, you're going to have 90s stuff, but it's not... Everybody's going to have long hair and listen to Nirvana. It's not going to be too dissimilar to, what we've seen before.
It's a really good idea.
And I just think, just commit to that concept and just think about what worked and just not necessarily copy it, but use it as the basis. Now I want to see a
Terminator in like cowboy times trying to kill her grandparents.
Well, that's the thing. Because it's time travel. There's so many options,
that would be amazing.
And it seems just a little bit lazy just to go, oh, this happens after the last one. Because that's just
always linear.
Time's just linear. Well, this one happened after the events of Judgment.
Because that's what's so good in Terminator 2 is they go back and try to stop the bloke from building Skynet, don't they?
Yeah,
which is a nice touch.
Touch, and
they convince him after shooting him quite a lot. They convince him.
Just got that image of the actor. Hyperventilating, holding a grenade.
But that whole bit's so good. And Arnie cuts his arm off, as it were. Show him. That's so good.
His wife just because that would be your reaction. But that's what I mean.
Right. Why is it always linear? Why is it always the next? So they can keep Arnie getting older. Obviously, that's a really good idea.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I think Dark Fate wasn't a bad movie either. I don't think it was great.
I saw it. I've only seen it once, and I was really hungover, and I couldn't tell you whether I was too hungover to enjoy it.
It was all right. I think the main appeal of it was that we got to see Linda Hamilton back,
which was a nice touch.
Yeah, and I think the casting, again, I forget her name, but the casting of the
Terminator.
Yeah, the lead in that.
Yeah.
I thought that was good casting. But I think perhaps, with Salvation, I agree. I think it's one of the better sequels. I think it's third place in terms of the hierarchy of films. Personally, I would go 1, 2, 4 as the best. I think the first one's the best one. I think number 2 is a better movie and is a better action film, but I always prefer the first one. because I like to see the Terminator as a
villain.
ruthless killing machine, as opposed to whenever I see those scenes with Edward Furlong and Arnie, all I can think of is where the series ended up.
Soured.
It sours it for me.
Yeah.
I still love the movie, don't get me wrong.
I think I'm 2-1-4. I might be 1-2-4. It's a tough call for me. They're two very different movies, 1 and 2, and both amazing in their own rights. But I guess 1 is the original. It's got to have the edge on it. It's got to be 1 over 2. It has to be. Hasn't got Guns N' Roses ruining the soundtrack either.
Oh, I love that.
It's a great song.
What's it been ruining?
No, it's ruining. I just see the video at the end. You know, the video for You Could Be Mine, and then Arnie's in that at the end, and it's that comedy skit taken one step too far for me when he's like, waste of ammo, and you see the Terminator view, and it's just, there's something about it. It's just so MTV, it annoys me. You know what I mean? As I say, I feel like there's so much potential with the franchise. However, I think there's only so much you can do with it now. I think you're right. Go back 70s, 60s, something like that. Go back.
Because I think
I would genuinely love to see a cowboy and western Terminator movie. I don't know if you could make it not terrible. Find someone to write it.
You're veering a little bit into Westworld.
It's a little bit, yeah. It's a little bit.
As long as you get Yul Brynner in it, you'll be all right.
If you played it like more of a horror type movie than an action movie, I think there might be something there. But I really like the idea of going back to the 60s, as long as you avoid all those pitfalls of the obvious jokes.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Do you see what I'm seeing, man? You know, all that sort of rubbish. I think that's a really good idea. Just keep going back. Because the technology, the weapons get more basic from the human end as well.
So immediately
the peril is up.
Yeah. The stakes are so much higher.
Cars are slower.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's
I actually want to see a car chase with a Terminator and a Ford Mustang now. You know what I mean? like
a 68 Ford Mustang,
like a Steve McQueen Bullet kind of car chase.
This is what I mean.
With a Terminator.
There's so much you can do.
Did they have Ford Mustangs in the 60s? They definitely had them in the 70s, right?
Yeah, they had Ford Mustangs in the 60s.
Oh, I really want to see that.
Got a Stingray.
Oh, that'd be
a Corvette Stingray. Can have a Dodge Charger. That's what I mean.
It would be good.
I've hit on the money. Yeah. And if James Cameron is listening,
he'll have to forgive us for saying he might be a bit of an a-hole because we just gave him a perfect prequel.
We don't have to. We don't have to ask for forgiveness.
You just gave him a perfect prequel. You know what I mean?
And who knows, there could be somebody making a podcast in 20, 30 years' time saying that James Cameron got into legal trouble from a podcast because they had an idea for a film on the Terminator and it was made, you know.
It's just a credit to do. You don't have to pay me. Although £1 million would be nice. I was here when Ryan said it and I said Steve McQueen, so that must count for something, right?
I'll share it with you, mate. Don't worry. But honestly, that's what I would do, and I just think there's so much potential there. But
rather than constantly remaking the same sequel,
I think going back to number 4, perhaps where the issues lied with that were probably in
well, for as long as I can remember, people were like, "I want to see a Terminator movie set in the future." For as long as I can remember, people were saying that. And I'd be like, yeah, that'd be cool. That'd be cool. It's a different movie, but it's cool.
I think everybody went to see it to hate on it because of the Bale outburst. You know, I think you've forgotten
You're
about...
amateur, man.
Good for you!
Oh, lordy-dardy-dar!
There's a bit in there where you can just see he's at the end of a tour. He goes, no!
Yeah, it's so good, isn't it?
But
just because they're trying to calm him down, like, come on, Chris, let's go for a walk, Chris. Let's go. You can hear someone just say, "No, let's go for it." No, you're amateur, man. You're a nice guy, but me and you are through. La-di-da-di-da-di-dar.
I like the way he keeps up his accent throughout
it. It slips, but it is really good at it.
Right.
Oh, la-di-da-di-da. You're amateur, man.
Good for you.
Oh, good for you. I'm trying to act.
I think
was it a lighting engineer or something like that? Some dude, he was he was fannying around in the back of the scene, changing the lights. I mean, you can't sanction such behaviour. You shouldn't talk to people like that. I could understand where he was coming from. If that was like the third or fourth take and this dude just keeps wandering in, I'd be like, dude, do you want to take
I mean, the film was directed by MCG.
Okay.
Which he's mainly known for doing TV stuff. He's done a lot of episodes of Supernatural. And
he had a spate of
to be totally honest,
big blockbuster movies though, didn't he? Did he do a Transformers MCG?
Yes, yeah,
I feel like he did.
But to be honest, I can never really trust somebody who refers to himself by three initials that aren't his initials.
Yeah.
Just MC. Like,
can you imagine if you knew the Edge from U2? You'd be like, do I really have to call you the Edge? Because I'm not gonna. Your name's Brian. Actually, I don't know what his name is. What is his name?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I imagine it's something really.
Can you imagine?
Mundane.
I want you to call me the Edge from now. I want you to call me MCG from now on. But like, why?
I mean, it wouldn't work with us two, would it?
No.
Like,
no.
if I said that to you, like, I mean,
I would be called RE from now on. I'd be like, why, Ryan? Why?
You'd literally end up calling me my name more than you do now, just to prove a point.
Just to be annoying.
You know. But yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people's good faith was kind of lost when they saw that, and so expectations coupled with you started on the back foot, and you know, I think it's a great film.
I mean, you're talking, what is it, 2009-ish? Something like that, right?
Yeah, 2009, I think.
Yeah, it's got to be around there, yeah. So you've already had the Star Wars prequels that have annoyed everyone. So everyone's primed to hate stuff at that point, and that, you know, give the fans what they want and they don't want it, you know. Like, careful what you wish for, but it's a good movie. And I think it was just, the main criticism, like I've already said, the main criticism I always remember being leveled at is it's bleak. And I'm like, man, it's good. It's good. It's 30 miles of bad road, you know.
I think some of the casting isn't great. I think Anthony Elkin as John Connor. I don't mind. I think he's an alright actor. I haven't got anything against him. I think it may be partially down to the script as well, but I don't see him as someone who becomes a respected military leader. Yeah. Somebody who leads resistance. I don't see that, and perhaps that's because when they were making it, they had a longer term plan, and they were like, "Well, we're going to only show you in this light. The next time we see you as John Connor, you're going to be in this light." Yeah, you know, perhaps we didn't have enough time to see that character arc, but I think Sam Worthington in that role, I think was a good bit of casting. I think they almost committed to what I was just saying about and just forgetting about Arnie. They almost done it. And don't get me wrong, I think that moment where old Arnie is revealed. I remember I was sitting in the cinema with a friend of mine, and the guy in front of us was getting really annoyed because every time something happened, we were like, "Oh, that's so cool," and we were like, we kept saying, "Oh, well, you remember in number 2 when they say X, well, yeah, that's the hard back to that." And this guy was getting really annoyed.
I don't blame him, to be honest. That would annoy me. I would like to shut up.
But it was the first Terminator film I saw in the cinema. So it's
right on, yeah.
Because of the time, you know, I wasn't.
Might have been the first one I saw in the cinema.
Oh,
I think it was the first Terminator film I went to cinema to see.
So, you know, it's that thing of...
did I go see 2 in the cinema?
And I remember I remember the moment where Arnie came out, or the CGI Arnie came out, and I was just like, that is so cool.
It's so cool, yeah.
So they almost done everything I kind of asked. I don't think it's a perfect movie, but I think it's the best of the rest.
The best, yes, perfect, you know, yeah, exactly, the best of the rest, yeah.
You know, Genesis, the first 5 minutes, it's not too bad, and then it just goes down. Some reason they choose Sarah Connor to refer to that Terminator as Pops, yeah, because that's what we need. We need to humanise the ruthless killing machine even more. I struggle
to get from the Sarah Connor of 2 to the Sarah Connor of 5. Of Genesis.
It's because they're not the same character.
I'm like, how did her character change? Like, that's the two don't jar.
Because in 2, she's like,
and then when you get
she's militant to the point of,
and she's a bit nuts.
Yeah. You know, it's
understandably so at this point.
It's almost,
and then you get to Dark Fate, and it's like, that's how I imagine she would be. You know what I mean? Like, a little kooky.
It's like the franchise has to make a mistake before they realise. Like, we made a mistake with that Sarah Connor. Now we do the thing we should have done that time.
What's the Sarah Connor like in the TV show? The Sarah Connor Chronicles?
Apparently that was quite good, quite well received. I've never seen it. Obviously, that was played by Lena Headey, who's I think is a great actress. Yeah. And I think the main Terminator in that, or the equivalent Arnie Terminator that protects the two, is a female Terminator, which again I think is a shrewd move. I think in the third one, I think having a female Terminator is a great move. The problem being is immediately you've sexualized the Terminator by having the boob inflating scene.
Oh, it's just so that's in there.
It's just
it's so unnecessary.
It's like you've undone all the hard work of having strong female characters in one moment, and it's like, by that point, I've already lost the good faith that I had, because I've seen the Terminator wearing Elton John and saying "Talk to the Hand" in a gay bar. It's like, okay, why did we need to see that?
Yeah. Oh God! I actually
the more I think about three, the worse it gets.
Yeah, I'd forgotten about the talk to the hand bit. Yeah. Yeah. It's just unnecessary. Like you say, once you start down that road of having to give him jokes and comedy value, it's so easy to fall into really just bad jokes.
Yeah.
You can get away with a lot of stuff in a movie being off, but bad jokes you can't get away from.
I think as long as things... And look, I don't think anybody...
I forgot about the boob inflating scene
so
as well.
Bad.
Yeah.
So, just to get out of a parking ticket.
Yeah.
Why would the Terminator not just kill?
She's a killing machine.
Remember the scene? Wrong.
Yeah.
There you go. That solved that problem.
And he walks up to that copper in the first one and steals his car, bashes his head against the car and drives off in his car.
It's you've got all the recipe there, and you somehow managed to nose it up. Just don't get it. But I think the legacy of the franchise is, I think we're at a point, unfortunately, where I think fingers have been burnt too many times. I think if you'd have done, before Genesis, I think that was the point where you had the opportunity to really sort of like do essentially a new trilogy. Take the Planet of the Apes, way forward, and do that. That trilogy is a great trilogy. Things were kind of just at the cusp. Well, remakes have always happened, but essentially, when Genesis was out, it seemed to be they were a heavy influx going back to an old intellectual property, remakes, reimaginings, whatever you want to call them. That was the point where you had the opportunity to really go, there's so much more to this franchise. We need a director who's going to have the passion for this project, rather than, we've got a film that's ready made. We just need somebody to sit behind the camera and make the decisions make the decisions that the studio want.
Yeah. Yeah, they came close with Dark Fate. Was it Tim Miller who directed Dark Fate?
Yeah, Tim Miller's a good director.
And he was passionate about it. He knew what he wanted to do, and it's close. It's close to a good movie. Again, we don't keep repeating ourselves. It is that it's the linear timeline problem of having to put Arnie in every movie. Hence why those are the problems you now butt up against, aren't they? I think you're dead right there.
I mean, I just remember watching that and being like, I'd already kind of resigned myself to it not being a good movie, even though Tim Miller's a great director. Tim Miller's the one who done the Mad Max reboot, is he?
Deadpool, didn't he, I think?
Deadpool, yeah, that's it, sorry. It wasn't, he didn't do Mad Max, I don't think.
I'm not sure. I'll check.
But by that point, I'd already gone, I felt like this when I saw the first few trailers for Genesis.
Yeah.
I felt like this when I saw the first few trailers for Rise of the Machines. What was
confusing about Genesis was Cameron was on board for it being a great movie, and it wasn't.
I think he was paid to say that, in all honesty. I think
I need a new swimming pool.
I don't mean that horribly.
Go watch my movie.
Perhaps he wasn't paid for it, but I think obviously James Cameron has got got to the point where he's so focused on the Avatar franchise that I think he's a little bit blinkered by things.
Still not watched Avatar.
You know, James Cameron post mid-90s is a very different James Cameron pre-90s.
Yeah,
as soon as
Titanic, really,
Titanic is that point where James Cameron now becomes a different filmmaker, and that's not saying he's a worse filmmaker.
He becomes James Cameron's special effects dude, and I guess that leans on from Terminator 2, because special effects in Terminator 2 were outstanding. You know what I mean? The liquid Terminator stuff
still holds up.
Yeah, was great stuff. But once you get to, I think, like Titanic, was that 97 or 99? It doesn't really matter. Once you get to Titanic, he's really heavily invested in how far can I push technology. I mean, he probably always has been. Like we said, if you look at the budget for Terminator, obviously knows how to push special effects, aliens, all of that sort of stuff. But I know what you mean. His movies are very different at that point. I still haven't seen Avatar, but let's not go into it again, because I feel like we go into this every other movie.
I feel like his movies now come with a message, if that makes it any sense. He's like
a vegan, right?
He's just trying to tell you something. He's trying to, you know, not that it's political, but it has more of a message. Whereas I think the Terminator, there are messages in there for sure, but it didn't feel like it was force fed.
It's in your nature to destroy yourself. See, Jamaican.
We need to be careful of the accents, don't we?
That was supposed to be Bavarian.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. It's human nature to destroy yourself. Yeah. It's inevitable. Judgment Day is coming. But yeah, like you said, Terminator is a story in and of itself. It holds its own. He's not preaching at you at that point.
So the legacy, I think, at this point is we either needed quite a few years without anything, or we need somebody to come along and completely reinvent it.
Yeah,
I think that's where we're kind of at. Going back to the first Terminator film, favourite scene?
It's a toss-up for me. I really like the tech noir scene. I think it's great. That whole scene just plays out so satisfying when he's shooting him with the pump action shotgun. He just keeps getting back up. He's and he's just spraying people with his Uzi. Like, that whole scene's great. I really like, for similar reasons, I really like the police station siege, or whatever you call it. That scene's amazing. I'm gonna give it. I think the problem is this movie has so many iconic lines and moments. There's a storm coming, all of those little lines and scenes that drop in throughout the movie that will carried on throughout the franchise. I'll be back, all of that. I'm gonna give it to the pawn shop scene. It's not. I don't think it's my favorite scene, but I don't think it gets enough credit. I also really like the first killing of Sarah Connor. Yes, that scene is chilling to watch.
Great use of slow-mo.
Yeah. That's the other thing he does really well in this movie. He does it in the tech noir movie. He slows it down just slightly to give you that sense of, like, she bends over. You see the people. Yeah,
I've just got that image of the people dancing in half time,
and the music slows. Everything just slightly echoey and slow down.
And then as soon as the action starts, it speeds up again. Yeah, it's such a subtle way of
to what's
building tension.
But they say everything stands still. That sort of your life flashes before your eyes, or everything slows down to give your brain time to think of a solution when something terrible is about to happen. They do say that when you're face to face with the Terminator. Yeah, that is in his big thigh high boots and his knee high boots.
That somehow fit perfectly from a man clearly 4 foot shorter and thinner.
Yeah, the bit that I like as well is Reese gets a jacket and a pair of, as you mentioned, product placement Nike high tops right there. And then in the next scene, he's got a T-shirt from somewhere. But he spends the entire film in that tramp's trousers, right? In that homeless person's that housingly challenged person's trousers that must stink, right? Right? He must, the entire film in those very snazzy trousers.
I just got an image of a deleted scene of being like, Sarah, look.
Yeah,
sorry.
Can you have a shower? Because she does make a hint. I'm dying for a shower. Aren't you?
Yeah.
Stinky?
Listen, mate, you stink. You need to get in there. Yeah. I've got a couple of bars of soap. Off you pop.
You son of a bitch stole my pants.
Yeah.
Yeah, next scene you see him, he's got a T-shirt from somewhere that's not explained. But yeah, I'm gonna go. No, it's a toss-up for me between the tech noir scene for the reasons we just mentioned. It's such a satisfying, and I just like that Uzi 9mm. I love that scene. What about you? Favorite scenes?
It's a toss-up between 3.
Okay.
4 technically. So obviously I mentioned the future flashback, which is a phrase that makes my head boggle every time I say it. Yeah. Where we see the other Terminator storm through the camp. I love that. Probably because that's the first thing I remember seeing from that film. I think the contrast between when the Terminator arrives in 1984 and when Kyle Reese arrives in 1984, I love that contrast of it being the Terminator. He does that slow rise and then he slowly looks out over LA, and that kind of calm, everything is efficiency. It's the least amount of movement to be efficient in killing and all of that. And then you see Kyle Reese and it looks like everything hurts. He just naked, falling on concrete. I've just slammed on the table if you heard a big boom there. I'm really getting into this now.
There's like a load of foam across your end of the table. Sponge. That contrast, I love that contrast. Yeah. I think it perfectly depicts the difference between machine and human. Yeah. Subtly as well. It's not in your face. Not over-laboured.
I think the only reason why potentially I picked it out is because I was looking for things to talk about, as opposed to when we just, most people just watch films, they just consume it and say, I like that, I didn't like that. Yeah. And then finally, I think only because I know how it was filmed, and it makes me laugh every single time I watch it because it's genius and hilarious at the same time. So the scene where the Terminator is crushed in the hydraulic press.
Yeah.
And you get you're a Terminator fucker. I love that line. Yes, that's right. I've sworn. We had 10 minutes of you speaking about wangs, for Christ's sake.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that's going to make the cut either.
But that line from... So there's the shot where you just see the red light go out in the eye. Yeah. And I love that shot. 1, it looks cool, and 2, because of how it was made. So for anybody who doesn't know, those 2 bits so the top and the bottom of the hydraulic press are simply 2 bits of polystyrene spray painted silver. Nice. And then to get that smoky effect off camera, one of the tech hands just has a cigarette on and he's just blowing smoke past the camera lens.
Is that right?
And as soon as you know that, it's so easy to spot.
So going to watch that scene again.
But it's genius because it's that thing of low budget filmmaking. You have to be innovative. You can't...
necessity is the mother of invention.
Exactly. You can't, we just pay for this to look better. You have to go... And, to be fair, there's so many miniatures in here that are really difficult to tell that they're miniatures. There's a couple of moments where you go, that's quite clearly, forced perspective. But the big truck explosion, that's all done on a 1x6 miniature.
Right.
Did you not know that?
I'll be honest with you. I was watching that whole scene going,
how did they do that?
They didn't have any money for this, and he's running over trees. And they're going to blow it up. And that was as far as my thinking went with it. I was watching it going, there's no money for this.
So, it's...
and then I just tuned out because part of me was going, we're going to get to the bit where he rises out of the flames in a minute. And as bad as Sinbad is, I love that. There's something about the looks on their faces when they look, and it's like, dun, 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 and up he comes, and he's limping a bit, you know what I mean? Yeah,
that was all done on miniature.
Of course.
So the actual truck itself was about 8 foot long and probably about half a foot high. They rebuilt the entire area of wherever they were filming with essentially big 10-foot flats, painted it on. So there's some great behind the scenes footage of them just walking around with the with the truck as they're placing it down. Even the way that they manage that to, that make that explode. One of the tech guys, he was saying about he loves the idea of it being like a domino effect where everything is cause and reaction, whereby most people just blow up a truck. But he was like, well, he puts the pipe bomb in the tube thing. I don't even know what that is, but it doesn't seem particularly safe and, complying with industry standards for trucks. Yeah. But excuse me, he puts that in the end, and rather than just having it blow up, what the tech guy was like, it needs to start blowing up from the end of the truck and make its way down, so it literally goes.
What scale's the model?
I think it's 1 to 6.
The explosion's really impressive.
And it's only when
really impressive because you can normally tell. It screams tiny.
I think there's a couple of moments where you can kind of tell, only because it's the movement from Sarah Connor at the same time as she's running away, at the same time as you see the movement of the truck. It jars ever so slightly if you're looking for it.
Never noticed it.
And that's the thing. Even when you are looking for it, you can still go, that still looks great. So I think there's so many great scenes that it's difficult to really pinpoint one. I think I probably will have to go with the hydraulic press killing the Terminator at the end with the iconic line. I think 'cause that's the first proper point. Actually, no, it's the second time where you actually see that character arc of Sarah Connor going from I'm out of my depth here to the situation is what it is and I've just got to power through. So that's probably my favourite scene.
It's a good scene, man.
Right there. Further watching.
Well, it's any Arnie film, Terminator 2, like I've already said. I strangely wanted to watch Salvation rather than 2 after this, but you watch any of the Terminators, really. Westworld, we already mentioned. Definitely robotic cowboys trying to kill people. TV series or film would work, actually, but you got a lot more investment with the TV series. I would check out, even though I haven't, and I'm going to, that Outer Limits episode, just out of curiosity, really. And I would also, interestingly enough, this one part, I nearly was going to do this next week, this film, and then I thought 2 cyborg type robot movies in 1 month might be too much. RoboCop, right? Nah, I really want to watch RoboCop at the moment. So it was nearly going to be my pick for next week, but
I love that film.
It's such a good movie, right? I haven't seen the remake. We'll save it all.
I've seen the remake. Yeah. It's terrible.
Yeah, it looks it. And I was literally genuinely going to text you, I want to do RoboCop, and you were like Terminator, and I was like,
I ruined it for you.
No, it was just more like I was like, yeah, RoboCop.
Because I picked something else, didn't I?
Yeah, and I was like, is it too similar? I was like, well, we could save it. You know what I mean? So, but yeah, I would recommend RoboCop. It's just such a good movie, which
great show.
Owes a big debt to Terminator and Blade
86?
Runner. Oh, that sounds right. 86. Yeah, that sounds right. Arnie was in line to play RoboCop. Spoilers. Yeah, he was in talks for it.
I think the problem is you're going to compare it immediately, aren't you?
I think the problem they came up against was when they tried to build a suit around him. They were like, "This looks ridiculous." And it's like, it's not what he's supposed to look like. It's ginormous.
Peter Weller in that is great.
Such
a good brutal, movie. Absolutely brutal.
Yeah, it's such a good movie. Apparently, I don't know, we'll get around to doing RoboCop in a bit.
Save it for the RoboCop episode, whenever that will be.
But so brutal, they had to make edits, apparently.
Oh, yeah, I think all of those are really good shouts. I think specific Arnie movies, next one I would say after this that isn't part of the Terminator franchise, Predator, mentioned it earlier.
Great movie.
I think they're similar ilk in the sense of there's a thing from another world, maybe not in physical world, but from another time.
It's a killing machine.
Yeah. I think Rambo as well in a similar kind of, just to see the kind of level of 80s action that was happening at the time.
Like Rambo 2 maybe.
Yeah. I think whenever you watch an Arnie film, you quite closely are going to want to watch a Stallone film afterwards.
Yeah, I think you might be on something with Rambo 2, maybe just like the other end of the 80s action.
Yeah, because Rambo 1's a completely different film from the rest of the franchise, isn't it?
It's got much more sort of. I mean, it's got some ridiculous stuff in it, but it's much more sort of grounded movie, isn't it?
Yeah. I think another film which is a bit of a left field choice, but I mentioned Catherine Bigelow earlier, Strange Days. That's another look at how technology and, you know, a dystopian future. It's quite a long film for sci-fi. It's like 2.5 hours long. Ray Fiennes and Angela Bassett, I believe. I think that's a great film. Tom Sizemore as well. Basically, just keep rewatching Terminator 1 and 2 and 4.
I think you could throw in a Blade Runner, similar, and Matrix if it was indeed written by the same person. You're probably worth a check out of the first 3 Matrix movies. Even
if it's not, it's very similar. As you say, it probably is that next level on, isn't it? Where you go from there. I think Blade Runner's again another good shout. And Blade Runner 2049, that's a really good sequel.
Still haven't seen that.
It is phenomenal that they somehow managed to capture the same lightning in a bottle, that phrase we use all the time, so many years afterwards, and without going like too much into fan service and just doing the same thing. Oh, let's see Harrison Ford do that, you know, essentially Indiana Jones again. So that's a really great performance by Dave Bautista. I think all of those are quite good shouts. Anything we want to leave the listeners with as we come to the end of our Terminator episode?
Let's go back and watch Arnie's Dong. I've got nothing.
There you go.
That's getting edited out.
I don't think it should. It's 10 minutes of pure humour.
No, I think we covered it all, yeah.
Life lessons for me, Matthew McConaughey. Come with me if you want to live. Life lesson number 302. Y'all gonna need bigger boat.
Once again, we say thank you to everyone for listening. We hope you had some laughs, learned a little something, and can't wait to come back for more. Don't forget to subscribe from wherever you get your podcasts, hit us up on some of our socials, and spread the word. I've been Ryan Etherington, he's been Jimmy Murphy, we've been Bury Our Bones With. Be a one-button job. Boom, 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 toom, toom, toom.
I have a terrible tendency to just scroll about but you're talking when we're doing it. I still find it slightly distracting.
It's a bit weird, but I think it's a bit weird. But I suppose
maybe if you listen to this back, see if it sounds. I was like, I'm going to have to stop it. You're listening back like,
good job I observed that well, wasn't it?
Perfect. Surprisingly, not a lot of Arnie impressions in that episode.
Should we get them in now?
Spend all at the end. Come on, do it. Listen to my podcast. Come on, I've got the big wang.
Spent most of our time doing a Bavarian country accent.
Well, it's in human nature to destroy itself, isn't it?
Uzi 9mm. What's the name?
I think you're quite wrong there.
Oh, I think you'll find I can put the bullets in the shotgun. I've just done it.
What's up, Babber? Hasta la vista, Babber.
Oh, that's brilliant. I think that's hilarious. That thought of people in Austria
Just
being
crazy,
like,
yeah.
listen to him, he's a country boy.
I'm a killer machine from the future. I am a robot. I've come with me if you wants to live.
Fuck you, arsehole.
I'll be right back, Inums.
What's your address over there? I'm thinking of popping in.
Hasta la vista, Babber. Loves you.